All of us fail in myriad ways almost every single day. And yet we live in an age where it is very difficult to be honest about failure, where it seems as if everyone else is nailing their life. Because we live in an age of curated perfection, of social media, of Instagram filters, and it can feel quite lonely sometimes to be vulnerable. It is paradoxically when we are our most vulnerable and when we choose to be open and honest about that vulnerability that we become our strongest selves. Because not only do we learn more about who we are, but we're able to connect on a very human level with other people. In October 2017, a long-term relationship came to an end. It was brutal, it was out of the blue, and it was 3 weeks before my 39th birthday. So I faced my 39th birthday with something akin to trepidation, because I was in no way where I had thought I would be at that stage in my life. During my 30s, I had had a very busy time. I had got married and then divorced. I had tried and failed to have children. I had 2 unsuccessful rounds of IVF and a miscarriage at 3 months. And when I look back at my 30s, I realized that they had been a decade of some professional success. I had written 4 novels. I was lucky enough to make my living as a journalist. But they had been a decade also of immense personal transition and personal sadness. And so off the back of this relationship ending, I took myself to LA, which is a very good place to go to lick your wounds because it's sunny and the time difference means that you don't get that many emails after 2 p.m. And it was while I was in LA that I found myself listening to a lot of podcasts because, as anyone who has ever been heartbroken will know, when you're in that state of mind, every single pop song seems to have a peculiar and specific resonance to your heartbreak. And one of the podcasts I was listening to was Where Shall We Begin with Esther Perel. She is a fantastic relationship therapist, and she basically opens up the door to her consulting room during the course of this podcast. So you get a kind of bird's eye view of relationships going wrong and then being put right. And at the same time as I was listening to this podcast, I was having the most incredible conversations with my predominantly female friends about what it meant to have loved and lost and what we had learned from various heartbreak and where we were professionally and what this meant and what it meant not to have children when one had always thought one would. And I began to look very differently at my failures. And I began to see that each one had taught me something so valuable about who I was and what I wanted going forwards, that actually each time I had ended a job or ended a relationship or a friendship had fallen by the wayside, it had been a lesson wrapped up in a mistake. It had been a nudge from the universe in a slightly different direction. And I started to wonder how great it would be if we could open up those conversations into a more public forum. And that was the genesis of How to Fail. For the first 8 guests, I really corralled a lot of friends and contacts and got them to do it as a favor. And I asked each guest before they appeared to come up with 3 failures, so 3 instances in their life where they felt that things hadn't gone according to plan. And they could range from the seemingly superficial, bad dates, failed driving tests, lost tennis matches, to the more profound. And it is a great honor now to listen to those people's stories because the topics we've discussed include living with depression, homelessness, death by suicide, failed family relationships, and it really has been the most beautiful journey of discovery. But those first 8 episodes I put out into the world genuinely thinking that maybe half a dozen people might listen, and 2 of those people would probably be my parents. I sold my wedding dress on eBay to fund the first few episodes. I drew my own logo with felt tip pens, as you can probably tell if you've ever seen it. Anyway, How to Fail went out there in July 2018, and within 3 weeks it was number 3 on the iTunes chart. It was, ironically, the most successful thing I have ever done. It's been a really incredible thing, this journey, because it's made me realize how much we were all thirsting to talk about failure and how alone so many people feel in their failures and how ashamed they feel of acknowledging them in public. And it's really been wonderful opening up a space where people can be more honest. One of the most inspiring guests I've ever had on the podcast is a man called Johnny Benjamin, who is not a household name, but is a phenomenal mental health campaigner. When Johnny was 20, he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and shortly afterwards, he found himself standing on the edge of Waterloo Bridge, about to take his own life. The pain had got so great that he could see no other way out. And it was at that moment that a stranger walked past him and, noticing Johnny's distress, stopped to talk to him. It was this single act of compassion and connection that pulled Johnny back from the edge. And 6 years later, Johnny launched an internet campaign to try and find that stranger. 319 million people responded, and eventually Johnny was reunited with Neil Laybourne. The two of them are now best friends, and they tour the country talking to corporations and schools about mental health. And when Johnny was telling this story to me, it was extremely emotional. We were both in tears, and it caused a wave of listener response. So many people got in touch to say that Johnny's bravery and courage in speaking about that had helped them feel it was worth continuing, had helped them feel it was less alone. And really what I'd like to end on is that idea that however bleak it feels, however much you think you have failed, cling on that little bit longer, because the real failure might be not finding out what happens next.